Well, hello everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all. I can't see you, but I think you can see me. So for those of you who are new, which I think is actually all of you, this is our first FaithTech online event for the Oceania region. So you're a small part of history, actually a big part of small history, or small part of, I don't know what it is, but great to have you here. Why don't you, before we officially kick off, introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from or where you're tuning in from. I assume most of you are from Australia, but some of you may not be. So let us know what country, what city you're coming from. And we'll be kicking off in just a few moments. Definitely some familiar names here, but lots of new names as well, which is great. And yeah, we've got a great night planned. We'll kick off with a video in just a moment, which some of you may have seen before. But it's kind of a bit of an intro to who we are as FaithTech, and yeah, lots of exciting things happening in this space. So great to have so many people joining us. A couple from Sydney, Queensland. Any Victorians? Okay, we've got. Oh, we do have it. Okay, we've got Victoria here. I think Adelaide's represented. Western Australia. Oh, Tokyo, Japan. Welcome, Yuki from Japan. Let's see, are there any Tasmanians here, or any Canberrans, ACT, Northern Territory, maybe? I'm not sure. It'd be pretty cool if we had every state and territory represented. But oh yes, of course, Stephen, Canberra, yes. Oh, Northern Territory, Christine, there you go. I think we've got full coverage of Australia is represented. Which is very cool. Hey, we're going to kick off in just a moment. I'll explain just after this video what's going to be happening tonight. But yeah, Monica, if you could hit play, just turn your eyes to the screen and let's check out this video.
FaithTech is a global tech community for Christ. There's people all around the world that love Jesus and love technology, trying to figure out how do we live out the gospel in the places that we feel called to be in.
Maybe you've fallen in that gap where you don't really know how to use your tech skills in your faith community and you feel underutilized. You may feel a bit isolated.
FaithTech is a community where those people can find each other so that they can advance the gospel by stewarding their skills, stewarding their minds to bring glory to God all around the world and in their city. So FaithTech began with 35 people in the back of this dimly lit coffee shop where we are all just asking questions like, how do we in a short period of time build technology together to solve fundamental issues? And that's what's formed. FaithTech now is this global tech community for Christ where people are meeting all around the world to eat together and learn together and advance redemptive technology for the glory of God.
FaithTech Labs is a primary expression of our community where people who love Jesus and love technology get to come together and get to steward their skills to glorify God. You see tech products built that serve mission organizations, charities, community partners in the world that otherwise might not have the resources to do these sort of tech projects, but they're aimed at giving impact towards marginalized communities, towards helping the local church and helping the spread of the gospel. So you get great stories of 150,000 Bible distributions being recorded on an app, or sex trafficking being cut at the point of demand by an AI chatbot, or people coming together to redeem the worst website domains in the world for the name of Jesus. But you also see each member of that team getting transformed more into the likeness of Christ as they seek biblical wisdom in the actual process of building tech. FaithTech gives you the opportunity to take your tech superpowers, to take your passion for Jesus and bring them together in a project team that can then do something really meaningful, both for the kingdom of God, but in your life too.
So if you want to have an impact, you want to steward your skills to glorify God, you want to do it with other people, join a FaithTech community, join in what God is already doing all around the world, this great mission of advancing redemptive technology.
That's great. Well, Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Adrian. I'm
FaithTech.
the regional manager for FaithTech in Oceania, in this part of the world. And like I said at the beginning, this is a pretty significant moment because it very much represents the official public launch in some ways of FaithTech in this part of the world. As the video kind of told us, FaithTech has been around in the world for about 8 to 9 years, started in Canada. But really, as God's blessing has been on this ministry, and we've seen lots of different communities start up all over the world, it became clear that it was time to see an expression of FaithTech here in Australia and the surrounding regions. And today, this event that you're all a part of is really the first kind of public expression of that. So it's very exciting. Let me explain just a little bit about who we are as a ministry and as an organization. FaithTech is a global tech community for Christ. As you would have seen in the video. And my colleague, Monica, is behind the scenes. She's a regional manager over the Asia Pacific region. She's making all the magic happen behind the scenes, but we're part of the team. And this whole other team based in different parts of the world as well. And why are we here? Why are we here tonight? And also why every time we do gather, there are a number of things that we do. And it's pretty simple in some ways, but they really define kind of the expression of who we are. So we meet together, which we're doing now virtually, and of course we also meet together in person. We learn, which we'll definitely be doing tonight, as we will hear from Stephen in just a moment. And we also build. We seek to actually steward the gifts and the opportunities that God's given to us for His glory. So in terms of that's a bit about the what, but in terms of the why and the how, why do we do what we do? We talk about our purpose as an organization, as well as our pillars. Like, what is our purpose, and what are the pillars that uphold what we do? And so our purpose it's a bold and an audacious one, and it's also a faith-filled one. And our purpose at FaithTech is to awaken a Jesus revival in and through technology. We can break that down into all its individual words and phrases, but really that's the big purpose. We want to see Jesus lifted up in and through technology. We want to see technology redeemed and stewarded so that Jesus would be made known and made famous all across the earth, but particularly through the tech industry. And in terms of some of our pillars, what are some of the undergirding values and convictions that we have? A number of things. Let me just run through it really quickly. Firstly, it all points back to Jesus. Everything that we do, unapologetically, we are Christ-centered, Christ-focused. This is not primarily a networking organization or a content creation organization or a startup incubator. There's maybe elements of those things, but ultimately everything that we do at every level points back to Jesus. Secondly, we're led by the Spirit. We talk about being data-driven but Spirit-led. That's who we want to be. And we take a sacrificial posture. We're not here to dominate or to win, but we're here to serve, just like Jesus served. He loved and led by serving. That's how he loved the world, and we want to do the same. We take a sacrificial posture. Fourthly, it's people over products. We're not just obsessed about let's build cool things and make a difference. Yes, we want to do that, but why do we do those things? We want to love the people who God has made in His image, which again, Stephen will be talking more about tonight. But it's about people over products. And lastly, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We're not afraid to have a laugh. We're not afraid to have a bit of a joke. Even as we talk about serious and deep things, we want to express the joy of the Lord in everything that we do as well. And so all of that to say, at FaithTech, we want to see redemptive technology being practiced. The purpose and the pillars, which I just kind of ran through really briefly, it gives us a lens, right, or a filter through which we can view and engage with technology, namely in a redemptive manner. Right, and we do that kind of through two main avenues. You would have seen this highlighted in the video as well. But firstly, through communities, right? This is one expression of it, online communities, but also in-person communities in cities all around the world and all around Australia. And again, so cool to see that literally every state and territory is represented here on tonight's call. And what would that look like for a FaithTech community to be birthed right there where you are? We'll talk a bit more about that towards the end. But secondly, not just communities, but what we call labs, right, or skills. We want to take the skills, the hard skills and the soft skills that God's given to us, and we go, let's donate our time, our passion, our energy towards using technology to see Jesus lifted up. So as you can see from the map here, lots of exciting things happening. 38 cities all around the world. There's an active FaithTech community, +5 online in 15 countries all around the world. And there's so many other cities in the pipeline as well. And I know that for many of you here on the call, we've been in conversation already about starting a FaithTech community in your city, which is really exciting. And really the message that I want you to take away from today is kind of like this opening event, if you like, is that everyone gets to play. Everybody gets to play. We don't want to see people underutilized in the life of the church. Every body part, every gifting is valuable and significant. And for us with a particular bent towards the tech industry, let's maximize that God-given opportunity to see God lifted up in our nation and across the world. So that's just a little snapshot about who we are as FaithTech. Hopefully, I'm sure you'll have questions and there'll be an opportunity at the end to engage with some of those. But without further ado, I do want to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Like I said, at every FaithTech gathering, we want to meet together, which is great, but we also want to learn. We want to have our hearts and our minds sharpened as we engage with technology through a redemptive lens. And so tonight, as you may have heard, we're really excited to have a newly published author joining us. His name's Stephen Driscoll. He's from Canberra in the ACT. And he works for AFES. If you're not aware of them, they are the kind of one of the main university or campus ministry groups across our country. And he's recently just published a book on AI, actually called Made in Our Image, published by Matthias Media, where he really deep dives into how to think about artificial intelligence from a biblical Christian point of view. And so tonight we're going to give him the floor for a couple of minutes, and he's really going to focus on the artificial intelligence specifically through the lens of our Christian understanding of the new creation. Before he speaks, I'm going to pray for Stephen, but also just to let you know as well, there will be time at the end for Q&A. And so if you do have questions as Stephen is speaking, there is a Q&A function as well. You might see that just underneath the chat icon. There's a Q&A section, so feel free to post questions there. If you want to post it in the chat as well, that's totally fine. And we'll see if we can get through some of those questions a bit later in the night. So, yeah, I'm going to pray, and Stephen is going to be with us in just a moment. So let me pray for Stephen as he gets ready to speak. Jesus, we thank you so much right now for the gift of technology, for AirMeet, and for all the other technological vehicles that we're engaging with right now. We pray that this gathering and these next few moments would be an opportunity for our minds to be sharpened, but also for us to really think about how do we engage with artificial intelligence from a uniquely Christian lens. And we pray for Stephen now as he speaks. Use him powerfully, Lord, to help us towards this end. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, welcome, Stephen Driscoll.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, so good. Well, thanks for having me to your first FaithTech event. Bringing Christians together in a line of work with common skills is a really powerful thing. So good on you. And don't just be tech people, be Christian tech people. I've been asked to talk about artificial intelligence for a few minutes. And I'll get to that. I'll get to the subject of my book, but I also want to talk a little bit about the technological progress behind us, as well as the progress ahead of us. And to begin with, I want to observe that AI is another reminder that our lives are already unimaginably different to the lives of a person a few centuries ago. And I want to start by talking a little bit about that difference that already exists. We live in a different world to the pre-industrial world. The people back then would look at our world and think that we lived in some sort of heaven. If a peasant of a few centuries ago could see us tonight, they would think we're living in some sort of new creation. We live in a world where you can do incredible things like fly over oceans, light a sports stadium in the middle of the night, or even make a mechanical synthetic intelligence that we then use to make cat videos and memes. They would have thought that we live in a new creation. So 2 examples of how much change has already happened. Between 1775 and 1825, the cost of spinning cotton fell 360-fold. Now, that probably doesn't mean that much to you, but as a result of that, the cost of clothing plummeted. That's 50 years and over 2 orders of magnitude reduction in cost. When there were plagues in the Middle Ages, people ran in to steal the plague-riddled clothes off the dead. But when we had a pandemic a few years ago, I don't think anyone was stealing clothes off people with infectious diseases, because clothes are cheap these days. We can change clothes multiple times a day if we want to. The same sort of change happened with light. In Babylon in 1750 BC, to produce an hour's worth of artificial light, you needed to work for 400 hours to be able to afford the sesame oil. In 1800 in England, you'd have to work for 50 hours to buy the candles to get 1 hour's worth of artificial light. But an hour's worth of artificial light today with an energy efficient light bulb is about a second of work for the median earner in my country. The point is that technology has already made us way wealthier than people used to be. And in a sense, my point is that we already live in a new and a different world, a new creation to the world that used to exist. But here's the pressing issue. What happens when instead of cotton and instead of light, it's actually intelligence that you can buy 1,000 or 1,000,000 times cheaper than before? The next evolution of wealth and health and freedom and opportunity will probably come through this technology of artificial intelligence, making intelligence 1,000 times cheaper than it used to be. And it will lead us into a new and different world, because technology always does. Technology always shapes society. So that's the topic that Adrian's asked me to talk about today, to talk about artificial intelligence and the new creation. And my first point is that in some sense, we already live in a new creation. We already live in a different world to the world of the past. It's already a world far richer, far healthier, and AI will make it even richer and even healthier. And as such, we are going to face a tremendous danger. The number one danger in the New Testament is the great danger that we face in our new, wealthier world. And that danger is a danger that's only going to grow more and more and more dangerous. What does Jesus spend the most time warning people about in the New Testament? There's a few candidates, but I think the answer is wealth. Jesus spends more time warning people about the dangers of wealth, the danger of money, than almost anything else. Why is that? Why is wealth so dangerous? What is it about money that destroys people? These are questions we should think about before intelligence becomes 1,000 times cheaper. Wealth allows you to be self-sufficient. And if you're self-sufficient, you don't need to rely on God and you don't need to rely on other people. And both of those are dangerous. So Jesus warns in Luke 12, verse 15, Jesus says, and he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." But when you have a lot of possessions, you're very tempted to think that it does. Jesus also warns in Matthew 16:26, he says, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" But when someone offers you the world, you get tempted. The people that Jesus was warning, I think, were probably above average farmers in a dirt poor agrarian society. So what would he say to you? And what would he say to me as we move ever further towards superabundance. If in AD 30 Jesus talked about money as much as he does, how much would he talk about money if he was around in 2024? In fact, would he ever stop talking about money if he was around in 2024? Wealth for you might be measured in leisure time. It takes tremendous wealth to be able to watch hours of television a day, or hours of social media, or play hours of video games a day. That's a form of wealth. People in developed countries work about half as many annual hours as they did in 1900. And that too is a form of wealth. We have the wealth of time, and AI will give us more time. I already don't need to vacuum my house anymore. My AI robo vacuum sitting over there under the bed handles that task for me. I wrote a little bit of Python code this week using the new GPT 4.0, and it worked. And it took me 5% the amount of time it would have taken if I'd done it by myself. Time is a form of wealth, and you will have more of it than any generation before. So how are you going to use it? What are you going to do with it? I think one of the exciting things about FaithTech is that they're harnessing some of your time to do something of eternal value. But time is a great form of wealth. Time is a luxury. Wealth also allows for freedom to move around the world, freedom to move around your country, freedom to choose what line of work you want to do, freedom to have holidays, and freedom to unbundle life. Unbundling is a marketing term. People often want to unbundle products. You want to have just the channels that you watch. You don't want to have the whole pay TV service with 80 different channels. You want to take out the bits you want, but you don't want to have everything. We in the modern world unbundle families, we unbundle churches, and we unbundle work. And often it's technology that makes us able to unbundle these different things. In other words, we have families where everyone is doing the thing they want to do, even if it takes away from the collective experience that holds a family together. One person is watching what their AI algorithm is serving them in one room. Another person is watching what their AI algorithm is serving them in a different room. We all have algorithms wrapped around us, giving us exactly what we want, when we want it, in our feeds. And then we have nothing to talk about at the dinner table. Our tolerance for boredom is low, and our ability to function in groups is fading. Kids are far less likely to meet with other kids in the physical world because the customized digital AI-mediated world gives us what we want without the bits we dislike. We unbundle churches. We let the algorithms give us the church service that fits our likes and dislikes, even if it's on the other side of the world. You get the singing you like, the preaching you like, the people that are like you. We unbundle work by working from home, by not having to spend time with people we don't like in an office. We also lose the opportunity to share the gospel, to witness, but also to grow as we spend time with people who are different. And I think that AI will bring a new wave of unbundling. As such, this future world that we're surging towards will probably be wealthier, healthier, with more freedom, but with less community, less church, weaker families, and a deeper sense of loneliness. And in some ways, I think this transition is a little bit like the television. Robert Putnam, the Harvard social scientist, recorded a 50% decline in American community engagement between 1985 and 1994. You get that? A 50% decline in American community engagement in 9 years. Just picture half of the community engagement in your community disappearing 9 years. And Putnam says this, the quote's on the screen. Putnam says, "Nothing, not low education, not full-time work, not long commutes in urban agglomerations, not poverty or financial distress. Nothing is more broadly associated with civic disengagement and social disconnection than is dependence on television for entertainment." It's a bit of a mouthful, But he's saying nothing is more correlated with this decline in community engagement than the television is. The television halved community engagement. Stuff like whether people have their neighbors over for dinner, stuff like whether people go to church, whether people vote, and so on. It drew people away from each other because you could have your own personal entertainment in your living room. It drew communities apart, but the television didn't draw families apart because most families only had one TV, and at least they'd watch it together. But the algorithm's going further. The algorithm is drawing families apart. You now generally have one family, but 10 different screens. Each person, but their own algorithm. And I suspect we've seen at least a 50% decline in family engagement. We already lost the community. We're starting to lose our families. So AI is creating a brave new world, a new creation, and this is an incredibly quick sketch of some trends. But as Christians, here's what we need to do. We need to draw on the Bible so we can figure out how to respond to technology. We will be carried along by the current of the culture unless we actually know our Bibles and know how to respond wisely. So here's 2 quick points of application as we think about AI and the new creation that it's bringing. Firstly, I think that hope is our canary in the coal mine. Now, I'm not a coal miner. I don't know a whole lot about canaries, but I understand that back in the day, people would take canaries, which is a type of bird. They'd take canaries into coal mines. That wasn't because canaries were good at coal mining. It was because if there was a gas leak, the canary, the bird, would die first. Canaries are very sensitive to toxic gases. And my point is that hope is our canary in the coal mine. In other words, if we notice that we've shifted our hope, if we notice that our hope has just moved a little bit from God's new creation onto our new creations, then that's already a warning sign, a canary in the coal mine. I don't know you, but I want to ask, what's your hope in? Is your hope in the next technology? Is your hope in a comfortable life? Is your hope in your success at work and the money that you hope it will bring you? What do you dream about? What do you scheme about? And what are you living for? One of the most encouraging things the Apostle Paul does is he prays for your hope. I don't know if you knew that he does that, but he prays for your hope. Well, he prays for the hope of the church in Ephesus, but I think it was written for our sake too. He does this in Ephesians 1 verse 16. Paul writes, I have not stopped giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glorious Father, may give you a spirit of wisdom and revelation that you may know him better. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he's called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. Paul is praying for your hope. And in particular, he's praying that you would put your hope in the right things. He's praying that you would know the hope of God's glorious inheritance for you, that you would set your eyes on God's new creation, not our new creations, that you would have real new creation hope, not just hope in wealth or health or career or freedom. The curse on our world for so long has been scarcity. God cursed the world because of human sin in Genesis 3, and hundreds of generations have lived in poverty, but our curse might just be abundance. The curse of living in a world that gives us what we want. And like a moth to a light, that will draw in our hope. We will be so tempted to place our hope in earthly things, not heavenly things, not in the new creation, but our new creations, not hope in God, but hope in technology, and that will kill our faith. But Paul prayed for us that we would hope in the inheritance we have in the real new creation. Second and last point on application as we think about AI and the new creation, I want to encourage you to keep valuing community, real, physical community. I want you to value your families, and I want you to sacrifice a little bit of freedom and autonomy so that you can have time with them. I want to keep encouraging you to keep pulling back from the algorithm and to be with people as complex as they are, to keep valuing church, real physical church that you go to every week with flawed, sinful people that you know and that know you. The algorithm will never give you a hard word. It will never tell you that you're wrong or you're sinful, but people are pretty good at doing that. Finally, you might have to sacrifice a bit of freedom if you're going to be an evangelist in your workplace. You might have to take the headphones off sometimes. You might have to talk to the people around you and go into the office sometimes. It's hard to be an evangelist in your workplace if you don't go to your workplace. So keep valuing community and set your hope in the new creation. Now, I've kept that talk pretty short so that we have some time for questions. That was about 2,000 words, but my book is 50,000 words. I encourage you, if you're interested, hopefully that will give you far more to think about. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks so much, Stephen. And please do not hesitate to give a shameless plug for the book. And that's part of the reason why we put you on. There's no commissions, by the way, in case you're wondering, but it's a fantastic book and a lot of food for thought there. So thanks so much. We are going to have some questions now. So if there are questions that have come up ready, feel free to put it either in the chat or in the Q&A. I can see Josh, you've submitted a question there, which is great. But to help me with the Q&A time, I'm going to introduce, if he's ready to jump on as well, Jeremy Malouf. So let's see if he appears here. If he doesn't appear, that's fine. I'll bring him on when he is ready. But yeah, you know what? I'll wait till Jeremy comes and then I'll introduce him properly, so we don't have to do it twice. But yeah, let's start with some questions, Stephen. Let's start with Josh's one, because I think this is very fascinating. I think your point there around TV and the impact on civic and community engagement. So Josh's question here, I certainly assume it's true, but do you have any data or studies that show this decline in family engagement as it pertains to technologies in the home? Could you elaborate on that in any way? Yeah, whether it's data or just even things that you're drawing upon.
That's a great question. No, I haven't seen anything. I would think there would be such data. There's the Putnam data I mentioned about community engagement falling, and that's pretty clear. There's data about teenagers not spending as much time with each other in the physical world. The prevalence of teenagers meeting up with each other, going to a park, going out on their skateboards, that's declined. I guess the thing that would be interesting is how often do families have dinner together? When families watch TV, do they watch the same show? I haven't seen data on that, but I almost feel like I don't need the data on that because I think I know the answer, and the answer is I think it's plummeting. Most people I meet don't have family time together, and a lot of parents I know are desperately trying to get their kids out of their rooms to socialize a little bit with the family. So yeah.
Comment here from Junan. He said the data is very obvious in my family. I think it's certainly true. I know you've got 2 young kids, Junan. I've got 3. Yeah, and I think also the point you raised, Stephen, around boredom. I think the appetite for boredom is so low, right? Because if there's something always ready to distract you and engage you when you're bored. Really fascinating. Another question here from David Chan from Melbourne. He said, great talk, Stephen. So I agree. So his question is, would you say AI is different in nature to past disruptive technologies, or is it simply larger in scale? Is there something fundamentally different about this emerging technology that you think is not the same as other disruptive technologies, or is it just about the scale or the speed? Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's really good. I agree. I think the scale of it will be different because it's a foundational technology like electricity. It's the sort of technology that will, I think, find its way into most technologies. It'll permeate a lot of our daily existence. So the scale will be greater. The speed of it will happen, I think, faster. But your question was, is it more than that? Is it a sort of category difference? And yeah, I think it is. I think that it is mimicking some of the deep realities of humanness. It's training on the written output of the human race. Therefore, our language is an expression of our characters, our souls. And I think large language models really are mirroring deep aspects of humanness back at us. And the wheel never did that. The typewriter never did that. So this is different, and this is very weird. I think AI, hence the title of my book, Made in Our Image, that it is a mirror of humanity in our fallenness, our brokenness, but also our godliness. And that could be scary. I mean, we don't quite know what it looks like to give tremendous agency to a program that's basically still a mirror of human sin. So there's some rambling thoughts on that question.
Very interesting. A couple more questions here. However, I am going to introduce Jeremy, who is about to jump on at any moment. Here he is, Jeremy Malouf. I wanted to introduce Jeremy because, pretty excited. Yeah, let you all know. So Jeremy is the city lead for FaithTech in Sydney. So we're making plans at the moment to launch a in-person FaithTech community in Sydney. So planning for that's well underway. So Jeremy's leading the charge on that. And also Aziza, who's in the chat here as well, got a question which we'll get to in a moment. She's also part of the team. So it's pretty exciting things happening in Sydney. But Jeremy, you're going to help me out with some of these questions here as well. Can you see the questions in the Q&A box that we're looking at?
Yeah, I've got them. I've got a great question from Andy Tan here. Can I read that? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
He says, Stephen, you seem to have a very positive outlook on AI, i.e. creating wealth, yet there seems to be a real threat to many people's employment. So why do you think it'll end up making everyone wealthier?
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess those jobs.
Yeah. Well, to start with, I think, broadly speaking, my prior is that technology has made us a lot wealthier. I've read about the economic conditions of people in the year 1700, the year 1800, and I would certainly not swap my life for theirs. In fact, I wouldn't swap my life for the richest man on the planet in the year 1800. So that's my prior, that technology has made us wealthier. You can have a society so stunningly unequal that all of the progress gets sucked up by a sort of ruling class. And sadly, that could happen, particularly in authoritarian states. But I think in most of the world, that will not happen. You can have a little bit of a rise in income inequality, but fundamentally, I think people will be wealthier. I think I'm far wealthier than my great-grandfather, even if the property market's a little bit crazy in Australia. So that's sort of my point of view. I think I've forgotten already the second half of the question.
If people lose employment because of
yes, yeah. So the question is, are we going to be replaced, or are we going to cooperate with these things? The horse was replaced. There was something like 10 million horses in America. The motor car came along. Henry Ford, pumped them out in great numbers. And 30 years later, the number of horses in America had declined to, I'm just making up numbers, 2 million, 3 million, something like that. In other words, the horse was replaced. It didn't have another use case in such quantities. So people stopped, you don't want to spend money feeding these things because they're not useful. If you can cooperate with a new technology, great, fantastic. In fact, you might make a lot more money. The scary thing is when you start getting replacement happening. But because we're human beings and not horses, and we live in democratic states, we will have welfare systems. We will look after people. But the welfare system might become a bigger and bigger part of the economy, which brings all sorts of negative consequences. I like it when people earn money because they work. I don't think it's healthy to have a whole lot of people getting given money, not working. And that, I think, goes back to the creation of humanity in the beginning of the Bible. We're made to work, not just for survival's sake.
Yeah, thanks for that. If it's okay, I have a bit of a follow-on question for that, because this is one of the ones I had written down before. But given you said that people not doing useful work is a problem when you mentioned the welfare state, do you think that could, this is hypothetical, but if it leads to an economic collapse, so instead of a wealth gain, we get an economic collapse because of a lack of useful work being done by people in the economy, how has our AI-driven generation prepared us for that situation?
Yeah, I'm not sure I entirely track. Why would it lead to an economic collapse? Is there something in particular you're mindful of?
Yeah, sorry. The focus was on whether we would be prepared for an economic collapse if it happened, as opposed to the exact cause for it. What I'm just saying is, if there's the possibility that we have an economic collapse and go backwards technologically, how are we prepared as a society to handle that? And to think, will certain things be challenging for the modern person?
Yeah, well, I guess that's true in general, that as a society becomes ever more technological, it becomes very hard to go back. And I think we see that on the TV show Alone. There's a TV show, I think it's shown in America and Europe and perhaps in Asia, but it's certainly shown in Australia, where people are forced to survive on their own, alone in the wilderness. And I think they can take 10 things with them or something. But to have to leap back and live without technology once you've become used to it, yeah, that's really hard. That would be very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Aziza has gotten a great question here, if it's okay if I read that one out. In your book, you suggest that AI will likely trend towards people-pleasing. What do you mean by this, and how do we as Christians respond to or resist this?
Yeah. So I think AI mirrors human nature in two main ways. At least I'm thinking about large language models, the chatbot sort of phenomenon. Firstly, I think they're trying to mimic us in our debaucherous state. The first stage of training for a large language model is just to read and predict large amounts of the internet. So they mirror us in our debaucherous, unfiltered state. The comment section of Reddit or something like that is pretty wild, and they mirror pride, envy, jealousy, lust. All these sort of things are actually being mimicked or mirrored or emulated by an artificial intelligence. And so that's stage one, debauchery. Stage two is you then bring in reinforcement learning, and you try and civilize or adjust or adapt your large language model so that you can commercialize it and make money. Reinforcement learning teaches your AI to people please. And my point is that these are the two great categories of sin in the Bible: debauchery and people pleasing. And really, we've created a trade-off line between the two, and we're picking between people pleasing and debauchery. But the Bible has a lot to say about people pleasing that isn't positive. And I won't go into it now, but just in the book, it's a chance to actually explore some of the downsides of people pleasing. And various chatbots are on a line between those two. You've got Gemini more on the people pleasing end, you've got Grok more on the debaucherous end, and you've got various options in between. And then the next step after that is to try and actually put a moral framework of some sort in that moves it beyond that line, that moves it beyond people pleasing, but also beyond debauchery. And that brings in all the sort of moral issues that the philosophers talk about. But again, I won't go into that, but it's in the book if you want to think more.
No, that's great. And I think that helps answer Joshua Monska's question here about what AI creates. And if it's okay, I'm just going to skip to another question from David Chan, which follows on from your last comment. If AI is a mirror, do you think it's possible to train or tune it to reflect godliness?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. I think so. I think that's the third option I mentioned, where you're starting to figure out what sort of a sense of purpose or morality do we want to put into an artificial intelligence. And as a Christian, I think we want to look to the Bible for our moral North Star. So, I think that's right.
That's good. I'm going to change gears because David has asked a question here about Microsoft's new feature that tracks every single action on your computer. What does the Bible say about surveillance, if anything? We're going a little bit left field here, but I don't know if you have any comments about that, since it's fairly topical.
That's a great question. I didn't think about what the Bible says about surveillance, but I guess you'd say something like this: the Bible doesn't, so far as I know, the Bible doesn't directly speak about surveillance. So then the question is, how does the Bible speak into the issue of surveillance? What might the Bible say? What principles of wisdom would the Bible put forward that could be relevant to the issue of surveillance? I don't have a lot to say here, but the first thing would be to think hard about your doctrine of sin. And if people are sinful, do I want to allow them to surveil my entire life? Do I want my entire life to be accessible to others? On a more practical level, I'm a little bit cautious about putting pictures of my kids up online because I don't want a large language model trained by an authoritarian state to be able to just process everything my kids ever did in life. And I'm a little bit worried that that's going to happen anyway because of the amount of information that's just up inevitably on social media.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I'll add one thing to that. My understanding is that the Stasi, the East German secret police, could tap about 50 phones at once. So they were doing surveillance, but they could only surveil 50 people because of their technology. In America, the Snowden revelations showed that they were able to tap millions of phones, but they didn't have millions of people working in Homeland Security, listening to your phone calls. So there was a human capital limitation there. But we're moving into a world where neither of those limitations exist. They can listen to everyone, and they don't need to get humans to actually do the thinking because run it through a neural network.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Hey,
Sorry, Adrian.
I might ask some questions here as well, because there are a number of questions here around a similar topic in terms of this is always the line that we're trying to constantly walk, right? In terms of being really vigilant and aware of the dangers, which is so needed, but then also being courageous in the way that we press into the opportunities that new technologies present, right? So Zosha here is asking about where have you seen opportunities for AI to be used in redemptive ventures? And then also there's some more specific questions around how is AI, I think Christopher from Adelaide was asking, how do we, have you heard of ways that AI has been used to see people come to faith? What are some use cases kind of in that realm? I guess very explicit, proclamation, evangelism maybe, or kind of more broadly redemptive uses. Any thoughts around that? And yeah, I mean, I can share a bit around that as well. But Stephen, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Adrian. And this is really important because we can fall into the trap of just being negative about technology and just thinking about technology and sin. But there's more to the picture than that. And God made us to be creative, to fill and rule and multiply and have dominion over his earth. And so there will be all sorts of ways that AI is helpful and beneficial. In fact, I would not know about the gospel if not for a whole bunch of technological innovations, things that allowed Romans to build roads, translation things, the printing press, all these sorts of things have brought the gospel to me, and I think also to you. And I think AI will be part of the gospel continuing on with its journey around the world. Firstly, I mean, quite obviously, it makes it much easier to translate the gospel, the Bible, into different languages, but not just into different languages, but also into sort of different idioms. We run an international ministry at the university here, and AI can help you to turn a complex sermon that you've written for a particular audience into a simpler sermon that you might use for a English second language audience, and so on. It's freeing me up already to do all sorts of things faster than I used to do them. But I'm really curious, because I'm not a tech guy, so I'm not at the cold face of this. I'm curious to hear what Adrian has to say, but also in the chat, if anyone has use cases that they're already seeing, I'd personally love to read about them. So
Yeah, there's a couple of things here that I'd be happy to share. One is I'm going to put a link in the chat right now to something that was launched pretty recently that FaithTech is a part of. We're not the sole contributors to this, but it's called the AI Collective. It's a global AI community for Christ. And really, it's a collection of different mission-driven organizations and individuals that recognize the potential that AI presents to us to see transformation happen in the Christian domain. And so it's a fusion of action-oriented, so kind of product builders, tool creators and whatnot, but then also the intellectually oriented thinkers, theologians, academics, and coming to the table together to really kind of unpack this in a lot more detail. So if you head to that website, I mean, it was only launched officially in May, actually a couple of weeks ago, but it's brand new. And so groups like Biblica, Missional AI, you may have heard of some of these names. You'll see a number of things there. Also, I'll post this as well, a second link. This is part of our on our website, faithtech.com/AI. This is just a very brief smattering, but a number of different groups and organizations as well that have been beginning to engage in this space. We've, through some of our labs projects as well in different parts of the world, there's been, evangelistic AI chatbots that people have developed where they can be talking, that's almost like first point of contact, engaging with someone who's curious about faith. And certainly that's not, the complete answer, as Stephen, you were saying very rightly. It doesn't replace Christian community, right? Where the gospel can be enfleshed and not just dialoguing, getting answers to questions, but actually let's see this thing lived out. However, some of these tools are, really powerful and useful. One of my friends, for example, in the Gold Coast, he's working on it's can't even say too much about it at the moment, but it's an Bible AI kind of platform, really seeking to help Gen Z and younger engage with the Bible, in a way that makes sense to them. So that's another thing. I think also, Andy, you shared somewhere, where is it? Andy, yes, in answer to Yuki's question in your comment, I'll just post the link here again so everyone can see it. AIforchurchleaders.com is another one. Yeah, so look, there's people out there, right, experimenting, and part of what we're wanting to see in FaithTech is, hey, what else could we do? What kind of locally generated things as well? But yeah, I was keen to hear as well, Stephen, any thoughts on, I guess, Zosha's the particular question around redemptive ventures, and I guess not just explicit gospel proclamation, maybe redemptive ventures, and then also I think Dave was using similar wording around the highest or best possible use of AI. I guess maybe there's a similarity in that question. What do you see? What's the kind of the pinnacle, use case? Not a specific use case, but in terms of this is how it can be used for human flourishing or what have you. Yeah, how would you answer that?
No great answer comes to mind. I have to say the pinnacle use case. I'm not sure. The carrying of the gospel, I guess, is a pretty important thing, and so if it helps us to do that, then that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm not sure I could put anything more to it than that. Yeah. I mean, I chatting to a Bible translator at the end of last year, and he's just buzzing with the opportunities that could come with this sort of a technology. People have labored away for decades to try and get the Bible into all sorts of dialects, And the thought that you could do that with a machine rapidly, I mean, that is pretty incredible.
Well, you mentioned as well earlier, Stephen, about the algorithm and the content that gets fed to us through these algorithms. If we were talking about a godly algorithm that could feed you just very edifying content, that would be something that would be quite amazing. But I don't know if there'd be any. I'll be waiting until Twitter creates a sort of a godly feed.
Well, you can do it already. You can do it yourself. It's a mirror. It's giving you the things you're engaging with, and if you're engaging with bad content, it will give you more bad content. And if you're engaging with good content, it will give you more good content. And I see this when I go on, my wife's Twitter feed, and it's a lot better than mine, because you go in there and she's got the Gospel Coalition. She's got all these, great organizations, great Bible teachers from around the world, filling up her, feed with encouraging things, and not just bad news and arguments and so on. So, you can take responsibility for your own algorithm. And then I guess as, for the builders amongst your community, what can you do to use this technology to actually give us good stuff? For us who sort of make Christian content, we sort of throw it out, and then we rely on the technology people to actually connect it with the audience at the end of the day. So.
I think maybe just to jump in as well, because I think it's a really weighty question, right, in terms of highest and best possible use, and also what does redemptive engagement look like? Maybe part of the answer is to zoom out even further and go, not just what is the highest and best possible use of AI, but what's the highest and best possible use of your life as a human being? Like, it's a bigger existential question, like, why are we here? Like, what were we made for? And I think as Christians, we do have a pretty compelling answer to that question. Maybe it's very simple, but one way of answering it is maybe to love God and love others, right? The great commandment, maybe that's part of it. Or maybe another way of saying it is, using this topic of the new creation, right? Where is all of creation heading? Well, it's God is in the business of renewing the earth, right? So that our earth, heaven coming to earth and all things being made new again. And so I think the best way that we can use our lives is to walk in accordance to God's will to see that happen. And I think if AI, as is the case with any technology, is seen as a tool to further that aim and to do it better and more effectively, then I think that might be part of the answer. And I think, again, maybe that's overly simplistic, but I think, as far as, redemptive ventures, it's where is God at work in the world? What is he wanting? What are the broken things that he is trying to fix through you, through men and women and children who are filled with the Holy Spirit and who love Jesus and love people? And here's a tool that I'm now giving you. And AI is one of those tools. Maybe that's part of the answer. I don't know. I tend to be quite I try to keep things simple. And I think that could be part of it. Let's go, what is God wanting to do in and through your life more generally? And then could AI help in some of those things? I think that's at least part of the answer. I think we have a little bit more time. I wanted to engage here with Dave C. One of the other questions as well around the relationship between work/vocation and maybe our relationship with God. I don't know if this is quoting you verbatim, Stephen, but in Dave's question, he was talking about, so he's made reference to the fact that I think you're alluding to technological improvements taking us away from the more wealthy we are, the more likely we are to be taken away from God in some way. Just maybe keen to hear you unpack that a little bit more. Is that what you meant? Anything you want to clarify? And then Dave mentioned in terms of, I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Keller's book, Every Good Endeavor, around the relationship, how do you as Christians engage with our work more generally? Any responses to that?
I'm a bit stumped. So the first one, so you said that wealth would take us away from God. I'm not sure that I talked about that. I'm happy to talk about that, I guess. Could wealth take us away from God? Well, that's the danger, isn't it? That's the danger that Jesus keeps talking about. That you build barns instead of coming to God. That wealth is a snare or a trap, and it sort of stops you. You trust in yourself, and therefore you don't trust in God. So I think there is that danger with wealth. It doesn't have to take you away from God. There are rich people who are Christians in the New Testament, but it is a danger, and it's not to be underestimated. And so, if you're becoming wealthier and wealthier, then you should be more and more mindful of that danger. So I can say more about that if you want. In terms of just a general comment on Tim Keller's book, I don't have any particular comment on that book. I think there's some good things about it, and probably one or two things that I don't agree with. But don't have any particular comment.
No worries. No, that's great. I think that's very helpful. We are going to wrap up this Q&A session pretty soon. Any other further, Jeremy? Anything else you wanted to add here, or any other questions you wanted to highlight before we transition to the end part of the night?
Great. Simon Chan has, I think this is probably one of the last questions. I think there might be another one after this one, very quickly. He says he's talking about feedback loops, that they're very tight. So the loop of that's increasing the intelligence of these models. But the feedback loop is very tight, and the response time is almost instantaneous. So Simon asks, with such rapid responses, the feedback loop can get out of control very quickly. What does Stephen think?
Is he thinking about a particular model? Is he thinking about a large language model, or Tesla Autopilot? Or it's hard to know, because the feedback loops are quite different. Training a large language model is still, in my understanding, it's still at the very least a 12-month project. We're not in that sort of just kind of Skynet style exponential insanity. It's still reasonably slow, unless you're talking about a different type of AI to what I'm thinking about. But the issue is, if you're giving any technology immense power, you better be pretty clear what purpose and what moral system you're going to put into it. And we're not. We don't know what the purpose of the human race is. Christians think they do, but society broadly is divided. And we don't have a sense of morality. We're in the world of judges. Each one does what's right in their own eyes. So Christians, again, I think have a lot to offer, because we do think that there is a purpose, and we do think that we've been revealed a lot about morality. So that should help us to wisely steer these AI machines.
Yeah, that's good. And the last question I've got here is very pertinent. How do we know Stephen is not AI generated? That talk was flawless, almost too good.
You'll never know.
Can you demonstrate for us live on camera, Stephen, that you're not actually an AI bot that we've wheeled out?
Don't you have to select the squares with motorbikes in it or something? Isn't that?
That's right. Give me some motorbikes.
I've got a picture of a bus here.
I'm glad you pointed that question out, Jeremy. That was the most highly voted question. So thanks, Daniel, for submitting that. No, that's great. Very good. Well, this has been great. There's obviously so much more we could talk about, but highly recommend, if you want to hear more from Stephen. Oh, there we go. 5 fingers on each hand. Do check out his book, Made in His Image, available from Matthias Media. So like we said, a couple of things by way of next steps. We're brand new here in Australia, but pretty excited to see some of the engagement and interest already. And so we're very much looking at starting FaithTech communities in-person communities in cities all around Australia. And so what we're going to do now, if you're able to stick around, please do. Obviously, if you need to head off, don't let us keep you, but we'd love to have some additional conversations. AirMeet has these kind of table functions. You can join a table if you want to and be part of the conversation, and hop off and join the other one. So we have 2 tables operating. We'll have the FaithTech 101 table, where Stephen will be there if you wanted to have any additional conversations or questions with him. But then also Monica, who is my colleague with FaithTech. If you have any particular questions about FaithTech as a whole, that's also where you can head as well to ask those questions. And then the other table, which is where Jeremy and I will be, if you are someone interested in launching a FaithTech community in your city, we'd love to have a chat with you, hear kind of your heart and where you're at, and chat through some of the next steps for you as well. So yeah, we're going to head to the tables in just a moment, but otherwise, thanks so much for being here. Do check out our website, YouTube, bunch of videos on there in terms of some of the things that we've worked on and built over the years. And do start dreaming and thinking about what could that look like here in this part of the world as well. So yeah, feel free. Let's head to the tables now. We'd love to see some of you there to have some additional conversation. But let's keep in touch, and hope to see you all around sometime soon. Thanks, everyone, and thanks so much, Stephen.